Imagine receiving $10,000 every time you got an A in school. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? For Jordan, this was the perfect incentive, a luxurious reward few could imagine. But can so much money really buy success? And most importantly, can it buy happiness? This story is not about an ordinary young man. It's about someone who, despite being surrounded by wealth, struggles with the pressures of maintaining an impeccable image. With each achievement, more people sink into a web of lies and falsehoods, all to sustain a life of appearances. But what happens when that facade starts to crack? When money is no longer enough to fill the void? Jordan is about to discover that the real challenge isn't in the grades or the awards, but in who he really is when everything falls apart. Will he be able to redeem himself before it's too late? Or will he remain trapped in his golden trap? The answer may surprise you. Don't leave your transformation for later. Subscribe to the channel now and be part of a community that inspires you to grow, evolve, and overcome all challenges. Turn on notifications and always be one step ahead. Your future starts here. The scenario opens in a school where social divisions are not just noticeable, but palpable. Right away, the viewer is immersed in an environment where the students seem to inhabit different worlds, despite sharing the same physical space. On one side, the rich, with their impeccable clothes and latest generation gadgets. On the other, the less favored, who always seem to be in the shade, seeking a place in the sun. The school becomes a microcosm of society, where power and influence go hand in hand with money. The feeling of inequality hangs in the air, almost like constant tension. It's easy to imagine how this impacts students' self-esteem, especially those on the margins. The tension between these two groups is evident in the small details. A casual conversation in the hallway that suddenly turns uncomfortable when class difference is mentioned, or the way the wealthy stroll through the hallways with unshakable confidence. They know what they have: power, status, and, most importantly, the ability to overcome any adversity by simply opening their wallets. Less advantaged students, on the other hand, face daily challenges, both internal and external. The desire to overcome is strong, but reality imposes itself like a wall that is difficult to climb. In this school, the rich not only dominate conversations, but also important decisions. The student council, the main activities, even the management seem to give in to the financial power of some families. The disadvantaged watch from a distance, struggling to find ways to fit in or stand out. There is a clear division between who can and who should. And in the midst of it all, there are those who try to maintain a neutral stance, an almost impossible feat in such a toxic environment. Jordan, the protagonist of the plot, appears in this context as someone who apparently found a way to navigate these two worlds. Born into a well-to-do family, he seems at ease in his role as Golden Boy. But something about his posture suggests that not everything is as simple as it seems. His search for acceptance and the desire to maintain his social status reflect the plight of many young people who, although privileged, live under constant pressure not to disappoint. His journey is, in many ways, a story of overcoming, but not in the conventional way. Underprivileged students, in turn, try to grab any opportunity that gives them a chance to advance. Many dream of the day when they can finally turn the tide, when they no longer have to live in the shadow of their wealthy peers. Overcoming for them is something distant, but not impossible. They know that to achieve this they need to work hard, be humble, and sometimes make difficult choices. This is the scenario the school presents, a silent battlefield where dreams are shaped and destroyed by economic reality. However, despite the stark differences, there is a kind of mutual admiration. The rich, at times, envy the simplicity and resilience of the less favored. Students from humble families, on the other hand, see the luxurious lifestyle as something unattainable, but deeply aspirational. Altruism, in certain cases, appears as a bridge between these two worlds, although rarely in a sincere way. Every gesture of kindness, every small concession, seems loaded with ulterior motives. As the plot progresses, it becomes clear that this dynamic goes far beyond money. There is a fight for recognition, for a place in the world, for respect. Jordan, for all his privilege, also carries this burden. He wants to be more than the rich kid. He wants to be recognized for who he really is, but the weight of expectations prevents him from following that path. Their dilemma is the same one faced by many young people: the search for identity in a world that insists on labeling them. Little by little, we discover that school is more than just a stage for the daily lives of these young people. It is, in fact, a reflection of a larger society, where the lines that separate the rich from the poor are drawn very clearly. But just like in real life, these lines can be blurred, as long as you have the willpower to do so. Overcoming is not just a theme. It is the basis of the entire narrative. The school becomes the starting point for major twists and turns, where each character will have the chance to redefine their destiny. The viewer begins to understand that, despite the apparent advantages of the rich, everyone is, in a way, fighting against something. For some, it's the pressure of maintaining a legacy. For others, it's the desire to step out of the shadows and shine on their own. But above all, it is a story about humility, about understanding that a person's true value is not in what they have, but in who they are. The school then becomes a testing ground for this personal discovery. And so, with each interaction, with each small conflict, the characters are shaped by circumstance. The audience begins to feel the tension, the drama that hangs in the air, and knows that something is about to change. Jordan is the type of student who attracts attention wherever he goes, not just because of his natural confidence, but because of something more tangible: money. And it's not just any amount. It's an exorbitant sum that he casually reveals, as if it didn't matter. $10,000 for every A on the report card. For many, this is more than an adult's annual salary. But for Jordan, it's just another incentive offered by his parents to ensure he stays on top. Money, in this context, is not just a reward, but a tool of power and control, something that defines who he is and what he can do. At school, this astronomical amount becomes a symbol of your superiority. The other students watch with a mixture of envy and admiration. After all, how many of them wouldn't like to earn a fraction of that for their good grades? However, for Jordan, that expectation comes with an invisible burden. He cannot fail. He cannot be mediocre. Every A he receives carries the weight of expectations from his parents and society. It's a never-ending race, where money is always there, but true satisfaction always seems out of reach. As the story progresses, we begin to realize that Jordan's money doesn't just buy good grades. It also influences everything around him. It becomes the epicenter of a vicious cycle, where those who have more can do more. If he wants something, he just pays. If something doesn't go as planned, money solves it. The inspiration he could offer to other students, instead, turns into something unattainable, almost utopian. The emotional upheaval that money could provide does not bring growth, but more pressure. The public begins to question, to what extent can money really buy success? Jordan's personal overcoming is directly linked to his ability to maintain this financial flow, but this leaves him further away from a simple and authentic life. For him, living a normal life seems unthinkable. His identity is so intertwined with what he owns that it's hard to imagine who he would be without these monetary incentives. Money defines you, but it also traps you in a cycle of unrealistic expectations. Within this cycle, other characters are also affected. Some see Jordan as an inspiration, but for most, he becomes a cruel reminder of everything they don't have. How can we compete with someone who receives a fortune for doing what should be done on merit? Humility, which could be a quality to be admired, is almost non-existent in this context. Instead, disadvantaged students feel constantly diminished, always living in the shadow of privilege. Jordan, although he seems comfortable in his role, begins to show signs of fatigue. The audience can see, through small gestures, that he is beginning to question whether it is all worth it. The dark circles under his eyes, the deep sighs, and the long pauses indicate that there is something more going on inside him. He can buy whatever he wants, but he can't buy peace of mind. And this is something that money cannot solve. The emotional upheaval he faces begins to intensify, suggesting that something is about to fall apart. Money then becomes not just a symbol of success, but of imprisonment. With each A grade, Jordan sinks deeper into a cycle of addiction. He is trapped in a system that rewards him, but also suffocates him. While his colleagues see money as a solution, he begins to realize that he is part of the problem. Altruism, which could be a way out, seems like a distant idea to Jordan. He is so immersed in the material world that he has forgotten to look beyond his own needs. However, the public can't help but wonder, will he be able to find a way out? Is there a possibility that Jordan will find a way to overcome things that goes beyond money? Or is he doomed to follow this cycle to the end? The tension continues to grow, and it becomes increasingly clear that money, while powerful, has its limits. Jordan can buy a lot of things, but true overcoming comes from within, something he has yet to discover. And so, money that once seemed to be the solution to all problems begins to reveal itself as a source of drama and conflict. Jordan isn't just a rich kid with everything at his fingertips. He is someone caught in a golden trap. The inspiration he could bring to others is shrouded in layers of superficiality, and the viewer begins to question, will he be able to see beyond this before it's too late? From this point on, the narrative begins to suggest that money, instead of being a tool for overcoming, could become Jordan's biggest obstacle. He's so focused on keeping up appearances that he doesn't realize what really matters. With each new monetary achievement, he moves a little further away from who he really is. Academic corruption within this school appears insidiously, almost like a shadow that permeates all the halls. Jordan, with his unrestricted access to money, finds an easy way to maintain his status, selling test answers. The scheme starts small, a $200 transaction here and there, but soon grows to alarming proportions. And the most intriguing thing is how everything is treated with a frightening normality, as if exchanging notes for money was just another ordinary day in school life. Other students, especially those who don't have the same privileges, begin to feel divided. Some see Jordan as an opportunity to finally overcome their academic limitations. After all, if success is within reach of a financial transaction, why not take a shortcut? Others, however, observe everything with disbelief, realizing that this path of ease has a high price. Honesty and integrity are at stake, and many wonder, are these values worth sacrificing for a high grade? However, the plot intensifies as Jordan's scheme spreads. What was once a simple sale of answers now threatens the integrity of the entire school. Teachers become suspicious, classmates talk behind his back, and Jordan himself begins to feel the weight of guilt. The public, at this point, already realizes that this situation is a time bomb waiting to explode. And the most intriguing thing is that, for Jordan, this all seems like a temporary solution to his problems. He believes he is in control, but little by little this illusion falls apart. As time passes, the pressure to maintain the scheme increases. Jordan not only sells answers, but also offers help with schoolwork and other academic activities. Corruption, previously restricted to one area, now affects several spheres of school life. The most disturbing thing is that many students begin to normalize this practice, believing that it is a valid way to overcome their difficulties. The inspiration to grow through genuine effort is quickly replaced by a desire for easy success. But as in every good story of drama and twists, the audience begins to feel that the house of cards that Jordan built is about to collapse. School, which should be an environment for learning and growth, has now become a place where academic corruption reigns. Grades, which should reflect students' efforts, become mere meaningless numbers. And deep down, Jordan himself feels like he's lost control of the situation. He realizes that by trying to gain an advantage over others, he is sinking himself into a spiral of mistakes. This spiral begins to affect your personal life. Jordan's friends, those who once admired him for his cunning, now begin to question his actions. They see that the price of following this path is too high. Honesty is replaced by distrust, and the feeling that something is wrong grows every day. For many, Jordan's situation is a reflection of the school itself, an environment where appearances are more important than the truth, where money dictates the rules and integrity is a bargaining chip. At this point, the audience begins to empathize with Jordan. He, like many of us, is trapped in a web of his own choices. His intentions in the beginning may have been good, but the path he chose is full of obstacles he did not foresee. Altruism, which could be a path to redemption, seems increasingly distant. He wants to help his friends. He wants to keep them close. But at the same time, he knows he's leading them all down a dangerous path. The twist when it finally occurs, is anything but subtle. The school begins to investigate Jordan's suspicious activities, and he finds himself trapped. What began as a way to ensure your academic success quickly turns into a threat to your reputation and, even worse, your very identity. The inspiration he could offer his colleagues dissolves into a sea of deceit and lies. Now he must face the consequences of his actions, and the audience can't help but wonder, will he be able to redeem himself? The drama intensifies as Jordan desperately tries to hide his actions. But as they say, the truth always finds a way to come out. And for him, the truth is a heavy burden. Overcoming is now no longer linked to high grades or money, but rather to your ability to face your mistakes. The viewer is led to reflect on the cost of dishonesty and the impact it has not only on the individual, but on the entire community around them. And so, the story continues to unfold, leaving the audience anxious for what is to come. Jordan, the boy who seemed to have it all, now faces the biggest challenge of his life, finding his integrity again. The luxurious lives of the richest students at school are both fascinating and alienating. The scenes are painted in vibrant colors of opulence, extravagant dinners with exotic dishes from around the world, trips to destinations most only see in movies, and expensive gifts that are exchanged as if they were trivial things. These young people know no limits. Everything they want, they have. And this ease in achieving what they want is reflected in their personalities. They parade through the halls with an almost arrogant confidence, as if the school were just another extension of their personal empires. Among them, Jordan shines as the brightest. His family, despite hiding financial secrets, does not skimp on keeping up appearances. At every meal with his friends, he presents rare and expensive dishes from exotic places, Swiss chocolates, French macaroons, and even the most authentic baklava from Turkey. Each item brings a new layer of sophistication and richness to his image, a shield he uses to protect himself from the truth about his real situation. This life of luxury, however, begins to seem more like a burden than a blessing, and the public begins to realize the emptiness behind all the glitter. It's fascinating how the story contrasts Jordan's life with that of disadvantaged students. As he travels the world, experiencing the most distant flavors and cultures, his colleagues struggle to pay for their basic needs. Overcoming for them is linked to effort, to daily sacrifice. But for Jordan and his rich friends, overcoming is a word that doesn't seem to exist in their vocabulary. Everything is easy, or at least it seems to be. The twist begins to unfold slowly, and the viewer knows that the life of excess is hanging by a thread. The public is led to reflect. What does it really mean to live a life of abundance? Jordan and his friends have everything money can buy, but there's something deeply unsettling about their interactions. Conversations are superficial, gestures are automatic, and laughter often seems forced. It's as if luxury has created a bubble around them, isolating them from the real world and true emotions. They are surrounded by material things, but the essence of life seems to slip through their fingers. While his classmates struggle to achieve every small victory, Jordan lives in a world where money solves everything. You want something? Just buy. Want to impress? Bring the most expensive meal to the table. This apparent simplicity, however, carries an invisible weight. To maintain this facade of perfection, Jordan must continue to surpass himself, not in personal effort, but in ostentation. And that, inevitably, starts to take its toll. The public feels that something is about to change, that luxury cannot sustain this facade for long. School, for these rich young people, is not a place of learning, but rather a stage to display their power and status. International travel and lavish parties become the real lessons they learn. With each new display of wealth, the public is left to wonder, what do they really value? Where is the humility? It is at this point that the viewer begins to realize that, for Jordan, true overcoming will not be about gaining more material goods, but rather finding real meaning in his life. However, in the midst of this life of excess, a dilemma arises. Jordan, as he tries to maintain his prominent position among his friends, begins to question whether it's all worth it. The inspiration he could offer others fades away in the superficiality of his interactions. He realizes that he is living a life of appearances, and that the real challenge will be admitting that, Behind all this ostentation, there are deep insecurities. This internal conflict adds layers of complexity to the plot, creating suspense about how Jordan will deal with this discovery. The luxurious life, which once seemed like a dream, now begins to turn into a silent nightmare. With each expensive dish, each international trip, Jordan feels more disconnected from reality. His friends, who once seemed to be part of his inner circle, are now just spectators of his ostentatious spectacle. The public feels that the fall is near, that the turnaround will be inevitable. After all, a life based solely on material cannot last forever. The luxuries, the excesses, the privileges, all of this ultimately becomes a golden prison. Jordan is stuck in a cycle where he always needs to be better, richer, more impressive. And little by little, the public begins to realize that he is losing the most important thing: his essence, his humanity. Altruism, which could be a path to his redemption, is something he has not yet considered. He is so caught up in this life of excess that he has forgotten the value of simple things, of gestures of kindness that don't involve money. And so, the viewer is left to wonder, will Jordan be able to get out of this golden prison? Or is he doomed to live a life of superficiality, always looking for the next thing that might impress his friends? The narrative leaves us on the edge of the precipice, anxiously awaiting the twist that is to come. Behind all the luxury and ostentation, Jordan harbors a secret that threatens to crumble his perfect facade. Despite appearances, his family is not as rich as he makes it out to be. In fact, they are facing difficult times. A series of bad financial decisions has led to the family losing almost everything. But Jordan, trapped by the need to maintain his reputation, continues to pretend that everything is fine. The viewer begins to realize that the weight of this secret is slowly crushing Jordan, forcing him to act in increasingly desperate ways. The pressure to maintain this illusion of wealth is overwhelming. Jordan, at home, is surrounded by hushed arguments between his parents about bills, loans, and imminent bankruptcy. However, when he leaves for school, he puts on his mask of wealth and confidence. The public can feel the growing tension between his public and private life, and it is impossible not to wonder, how long will he be able to sustain this lie? Every time Jordan treats his friends to an exotic piece of food or tells them about a luxurious trip, he falls deeper into his own web of lies. This revelation about his family's financial collapse is a turning point in the plot. Jordan is not only fighting to maintain his social status, but also to preserve his family's dignity. Altruism, something that could be the key to his redemption, has not yet entered into his equation. He is so immersed in keeping up appearances that he doesn't realize there are other ways to overcome adversity. Humility, something he has avoided all his life, now appears as an inevitable necessity, something he is not yet prepared to face. Meanwhile, Jordan's friends begin to notice small cracks in his facade. His excuses for not receiving visitors at home, his evasions when asked about new material goods. All of this begins to generate suspicion. The school, which once seemed like a showcase for wealth, now becomes a space of tension for Jordan. Every conversation becomes a minefield, where any slip-up can reveal the truth. The audience watches, holding their breath, waiting for the moment when everything comes to a head. However, what makes this twist even more dramatic is Jordan's emotional complexity. He's not just a spoiled rich kid who lost his money. He is someone who fights desperately to maintain the image he has built, not just for himself, but for his family. The feeling of failure is overwhelming. Jordan knows that if his friends discover the truth, he will not only lose their respect, but also his own identity. After all, he spent his entire life being defined by what he has, and now that that's disappearing, he doesn't know who he is without those labels. The viewer begins to empathize with Jordan, not because he has lost his wealth, but because he is trapped in a cycle of lies of his own making. He desperately wants to maintain his life of appearances, but he also longs for a way out. The inspiration he could find in his own overcoming is hidden, suffocated by the fear of judgment from others. At this point, the audience realizes that Jordan's real drama is not the loss of money, but rather the loss of himself. With each new secret that comes to light, Jordan moves further away from his friends. The friendship, which previously seemed unshakable, begins to fray. The lies, the excuses, All of this creates an invisible barrier between him and others. And it's at this moment that the public begins to wonder, will Jordan be able to open up before it's too late? Or will he remain trapped in his own web of deception until there is no turning back? Jordan's family, meanwhile, is also dealing with their own battles. His parents are mired in debt, desperately trying to find a solution. But instead of facing reality, they also choose to keep up appearances. The influence of money, or lack thereof, corrupts not just Jordan, but the entire family dynamic. And the audience is left to reflect on the devastating impact that financial loss can have on a family, especially when they refuse to admit the truth. The tension continues to build as Jordan tries in every way possible to hide the truth. He knows the upheaval is approaching, but he is determined to delay the inevitable. Each new day at school is a challenge. Each new interaction is a test. And the audience, now immersed in Jordan's emotional drama, senses the final explosion is coming. The party that should be just another moment of fun and ostentation among Jordan's friends quickly turns into something dark and dangerous. Amid laughter and banal conversation, a taser is brought to the surface, and the atmosphere changes drastically. What was an innocent joke begins to reveal a darker side to these privilege-based interactions. Jordan, caught up in the need to keep up appearances and maintain his image, watches everything happen, unable to intervene, as if he were lost in the chaos he himself helped create. The audience feels the moral weight of this moment, when the line between right and wrong begins to blur. The friends, once so confident and dominant, now seem to test the limits of their own morality. Power and wealth create a bubble of invulnerability, where consequences seem to not exist. The introduction of the taser is the breaking point, a symbol of how privilege and a lack of boundaries can quickly crumble into something dangerous. A situation that was once controlled by jokes and displays of wealth now threatens to spiral out of control, and Jordan finds himself at the center of this moral spiral. Tensions rise when one of the friends suggests they use the taser on one of the others, just for fun. The audience feels the moral pressure Jordan faces. He knows this is wrong, but his need to maintain status and respect among his friends prevents him from opposing it. It's an intense twist, where morality is called into question, and the viewer begins to wonder how far Jordan will go to preserve his image. The drama isn't just in the external action, but in Jordan's internal battle between what he knows is right and what he feels he needs to do to fit in. As the other young men laugh and encourage each other to use the taser, Jordan begins to realize that he is moving further and further away from who he really is. He didn't want things to come to this. His quest for acceptance and power took him to a place where morality was sacrificed in the name of popularity. The viewer, now deeply involved, watches Jordan struggle with his own sense of guilt and responsibility. The overcoming that he sought so much now seems to be increasingly distant, buried under layers of wrong decisions. The moral consequences begin to manifest themselves clearly when the fun turns into panic. The public, who until then watched with increasing tension, now sees things get out of control. One of the young people ends up being hit with a taser, and the atmosphere changes drastically. What was laughter and fun now turns into despair. Jordan is forced to face the reality of his actions and collusion. He realizes, too late, that his attempts to maintain his reputation and hide his secrets have led him down a path of no return. The public, who followed this journey full of drama and twists, now understands that Jordan is on the verge of a moral collapse. He is faced with the dilemma of finally admitting his faults or continuing to live a life of lies. The party, which should be a symbol of his social power, turns into a cruel reminder of his weaknesses and lack of control over his own life. Humility, which always seemed so distant, is now an urgent need for your redemption. The feeling of guilt begins to consume Jordan. He knew, from the beginning, that this life of excess and ostentation had a price, but he had no idea that the consequences would be so severe. Now he finds himself faced with a choice: continue pretending nothing happened or finally face the truth. Altruism, which could be his salvation, appears as a light at the end of the tunnel. But Jordan still needs to decide if he is ready to embrace this path. The audience is trapped by this doubt, rooting for him to find the strength he needs to break out of this destructive cycle. The moral consequences not only affect Jordan, but also his friends and, more broadly, the entire social dynamics of the school. The audience begins to realize that this is not just the story of a rich young man in crisis, but of a society that privileges power and status over integrity. The party that began as a celebration of excess now symbolizes the collapse of a distorted morality. And Jordan, though at the center of it all, is just a reflection of a culture that desperately needs a moral upheaval. The viewer finds himself immersed in this complex plot, where the moral consequences are more devastating than any financial loss. Jordan, the young man who seemed to have it all, now finds himself with nothing but a choice: keep lying or seek redemption. And as he struggles with this decision, the audience feels like he's on the brink of something great, a transformation that could redefine not just Jordan's life, but everyone around him. The outcome of this complex narrative could not be less intense. Jordan, after facing a series of challenges and moral dilemmas, finally finds himself on the verge of an important revelation. The life he has built, based on lies and ostentation, is not sustainable. And most importantly, it did not bring him the happiness or peace he sought. The narrative, which began with the apparent perfection of his life of luxury, now takes an emotional turn, where Jordan must decide who he really is and what he values. The crucial moment comes when their secrets are finally revealed. The lie about his wealth, his desperate attempt to keep up appearances, and even his shady dealings with colleagues. Everything comes to a head, and with that, Jordan finds himself exposed, vulnerable. But contrary to what he feared, this moment of exposure does not destroy him. In fact, he finds an unexpected form of release. It is at that moment that the viewer understands that Jordan's true overcoming is not in regaining his status, but in accepting his truth. The school, which once seemed like an arena of competition and ostentation, now transforms into a genuine learning space for Jordan. He realizes that his friendships, his achievements, and even his identity were based on superficial things. And it is in this moment of reflection that he finally understands the value of humility and altruism. It's no longer about being the richest or the most influential, but about being authentic and helping those around you. The audience, involved up to this point, feels the emotion of this transformation, knowing that Jordan is taking the first step towards a new life. The final twist comes when Jordan decides to do something he has never done before: admit his mistakes and apologize, not just to his friends, but to himself. The process is painful, and the pride he has cultivated so much begins to unravel. But in return, he finds something much more valuable: genuine respect from others and, more importantly, respect for himself. The narrative, which was once about power and status, now becomes a story of self-discovery and redemption. The audience realizes that Jordan's true wealth is not in his bank account, but in his ability to overcome his flaws and grow as a person. He becomes an inspiration, not for his luxurious life, but for his emotional and moral journey. The drama of the story is not just the financial loss, but Jordan's internal struggle to reconnect with his humanity. The altruism that once seemed distant is now part of his life, and the viewer understands that this is the true treasure that Jordan has found. And so, the plot closes, but not definitively. The viewer is left with the feeling that although Jordan has moved on from this phase of his life, there is much more to be explored. He is still learning, still growing, and the future, although uncertain, is full of possibilities. The story, which began with a young man lost in his own lies, ends with someone who has finally found an authentic way forward. Jordan's transformation doesn't happen abruptly, but rather gradually, as if each small revelation and each moral consequence pushes him one step closer to the truth. Over time, he realizes that his true overcoming is not in keeping up appearances, but in freeing himself from them. And this is where the audience, who followed each of his fights, begins to understand the depth of this journey. Jordan goes from being the status-obsessed kid to someone who finally values what really matters. The emotional turning point comes when Jordan, already tired of his lies, finally decides to be honest with himself and others. He admits his flaws, exposes his fears, and for the first time, allows those around him to see who he really is. The effect is transformative. The audience feels Jordan's relief as he frees himself from the weight of his false pretensions. And although the reaction from his friends and colleagues is mixed, some welcome him, others reject him, Jordan finds a new sense of inner peace. What makes this twist even more impactful is the way Jordan acts after his revelation. Instead of trying to rebuild his life based on money and power, he begins to adopt a more humble and altruistic lifestyle. He moves away from material trappings and begins to value small gestures of kindness. The viewer, who until then saw him as someone trapped in a bubble of privilege, now begins to respect him for his ability to change. Humility, once seen as a weakness, is now Jordan's greatest strength. However, the plot wouldn't be complete without one last test for Jordan. Even after all this transformation, he is still tempted to go back to his old ways. A close friend offers him the chance to return to the circle of power and influence he's longed for. But this time Jordan is different. He hesitates, reflects, and finally declines the offer, knowing that his value is no longer tied to these things. The public, at this point, understands that Jordan has completed his journey of overcoming. The inspiration he now brings to others is genuine. He's no longer the kid who tries to impress with his expensive clothes or extravagant travel stories. He is someone who has learned the value of honesty, humility, and selflessness. Her journey is proof that true wealth comes from within, from how we treat others and how we treat ourselves. The audience feels deeply connected to Jordan, not because of his material achievements, but because of his ability to redeem himself. The school, which previously seemed like the stage for so many power struggles, is now seen by Jordan with different eyes. He begins to realize that what really matters are the human connections he has neglected for so long. The viewer then feels the emotional closure of this journey, knowing that Jordan has finally found his true identity. And most importantly, he found something money could never buy: peace with himself. The story ends, not with a great triumph or return to luxury, but with Jordan making decisions that reflect his new self. He becomes a positive presence in the lives of his colleagues, helping those he previously ignored and reaching out to those in need. The public sees this as an example of overcoming, of how someone can change drastically by recognizing their mistakes and learning from them. Jordan is now living proof that true power doesn't come from money, but from who we are when we face our hardest truths. Now that everything is in sight, Jordan prepares for what comes next. He's not sure what the future holds, but he's ready to face it with a new perspective. The audience, involved until the last moment, feels that this journey is not over yet. Jordan has a lot more to live up to, but now, he's finally prepared to move forward with honesty and humility as his new guides. After facing all the trials and moral dilemmas that consumed him, Jordan reaches a point of true transformation. The school, which was once a field of social and financial battles, now becomes a place of deep learning, not only academically, but also about values. Jordan finally understands that his value as a person is not in his wealth or what he can buy, but in the way he chooses to live his life and impact others. This understanding, so difficult to achieve, is the true point of overcoming in the narrative. The audience, who followed every step of this journey, now feels rewarded with the conclusion of this story. Jordan, once obsessed with maintaining a facade of perfection, now appears vulnerable, willing to accept his imperfections and learn from them. Humility, which he avoided so much, becomes the basis of his new life. And this is what inspires others around you. He is no longer a rich kid trying to impress, but someone who, by accepting his flaws, finds a more authentic way to live. This ending, however, is not without challenges. Even with his new perspective, Jordan still faces the consequences of his past actions. Some colleagues still harbor resentment, and the road to rebuilding their friendships is long. However, he is not shaken. Now, he understands that it's not about pleasing everyone or having the largest number of followers, but about being true to himself and his new convictions. The audience is pleased to see that Jordan is determined to follow this new path, even if it is difficult. What makes this conclusion so powerful is the way Jordan finds strength in her vulnerability. He doesn't try to hide his mistakes. Rather, he uses them as a springboard to grow and become a better person. And in this process, he reconciles not only with his friends, but with his family, and most importantly, with himself. The inspiration he now provides comes not from his material wealth, but from his ability to face the truth and grow from it. The viewer feels that this journey of self-discovery still has a lot to offer. Jordan, now transformed, has much more to learn, but he is ready to face the future with courage and humility. The story, which began with excesses and superficialities, ends with a profound message about the true value of life. Jordan becomes a living example of how overcoming comes, not from the achievement of material goods, but from the ability to learn from our mistakes and find a more honest and authentic path. This conclusion is an invitation for everyone to reflect on their own lives. After all, how many of us have lost ourselves in search of external validation when the true value lies within us? Jordan's journey reminds us that what matters most is who we become, not what we own. The public, now immersed in this reflection, feels that this story touches on something universal: the search for authenticity and the courage to embrace who we really are. And so, Jordan's story, full of ups and downs, twists and turns, and moments of tension, reaches its conclusion. But the ending is just the beginning of a new journey, both for Jordan and the audience. The lesson is clear. True wealth comes from our choices and our ability to learn from our mistakes. The viewer leaves this narrative with a new perspective, feeling that, like Jordan, it is also possible to overcome our challenges and find a more authentic path. With this, Jordan walks into the future with a new outlook on life. He is no longer trapped by the lies that consumed him, but free to be who he truly is. The public, upon seeing this outcome, feels that they have followed a journey of profound transformation and says goodbye to Jordan with the certainty that, regardless of the challenges that still lie ahead, he is prepared to face them with honesty, humility, and the strength that only true overcoming can bring. Now that you've followed Jordan's journey, stop for a moment and think. How many times have you found yourself trying to keep up appearances? Aren't you also trapped in some golden trap, seeking validation in the wrong places? Jordan's story teaches us that no matter how important money, status, or achievements seem, true overcoming comes from within. And you, are you ready to face your truths, overcome your own challenges, and become the best version of yourself? Or will you continue to be caught up in what others think? If you are determined to transform your life and follow a path of authenticity, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here you will find what you need to evolve, learn, and be inspired every day. Don't miss your chance to be part of a community that values real growth and overcoming your deepest challenges.